right, so this is being recorded. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Ryan Boyk. I'm a technology advisor here.
Jeremy Dominic. I am a technology advisor here as well at C3 Technology Advisors.
And today we're going to talk about the end of the old phone network. Some of you may have gotten some letters, some not. And we've been getting a lot of inquiries around this. So we are going to talk about it on a live webinar for your convenience. First of all, we have some webinar rules. There is no live Q&A here. So anytime something comes up, you can chat it via the Zoom chat or Q&A window. We are monitoring that. Number two, as you've seen, we are not professional presenters. So I've already forgot how to share a full PowerPoint, so we're sharing it this way. And a disclaimer, we are guilty sometimes of forgetting that we've been doing this. Jeremy and I have been at this for over 25 years each. So sometimes we'll use an acronym. And sorry, this quick chat is to get an explanation there. And number three, this is being recorded. You will get a copy of this. So why are we here? What has been happening lately? Jeremy, what's been going on your end?
So for the past several years, the large carriers, so the ILECs, sorry, it's another acronym, but the incumbent local providers have been slowly attempting to move away from delivering telephony services over copper facilities. This includes providers like Windstream and AT&T, Lumen, and Verizon. And what it's done is it's caused quite a stir because there are a lot of legacy services that businesses leverage that are simply going away.
Yeah, and there's been some confusion too. So the most common questions are, am I going to lose service? What's going to happen on August 2nd, which is less than 3 weeks away now? What's going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, and we're additionally what we're seeing is, and you may have already experienced this, or you may not realize it, but to help promote, and I don't know if that's the right term, but to help ensure businesses move off of this older technology, those providers started doing some significant pricing increases. This started a few years ago, and we've seen increases that, I mean, are 3 to 7 times what businesses were paying for these older technologies to help kind of shove businesses off of leveraging this old copper services. However, there's still a lot of businesses that use it today and that will be impacted moving forward.
Well, we've got solutions. We've got many solutions, different ways to attack this. So we're going to get into all that. But as an example, Jeremy, I've seen recently $200 phone line, like a regular old phone line, and PRIT ones for almost $3,000 that were, billing the client. And sometimes they don't even catch this stuff. So why is this happening? Is this right? Is it wrong? Well, guess what? They have every right to do this because of the FCC ruling that was approved back in 2019 to go ahead and raise the rates. Why? Well, they want to get rid of the old phone network that's been around for over 100 years because it's expensive to maintain. There's capacity limitations on that old copper network. They have to hire a ton of people to keep that running. There's a lot of points of failure out there in the plant where copper goes from pedestal to crossbox to central office and so on.
Holy cow, you're talking all kinds of old school stuff. At the end of the day, this type of service was never terribly reliable. If you've had any kind of telephony services or data services delivered on copper facilities, you've probably experienced an outage. So moving away from this technology is a good idea. The problem is it's work. And quite honestly, most businesses don't want to focus on POTS lines or on these copper-based services. And so they've been forgotten about. Ryan, do you mind stepping back to the other screen you had, and we'll kind of touch base on the technologies that are and specific services that are impacted. So
yeah, and the dilemma is, we still need these devices, or we still need this stuff to work, but how are we going to keep it running? So go ahead, Jeremy, I cut you off, bud.
Yeah, so the services that are primarily impacted are services that are running through the PSTN, or the public switching telephone network. So the world that's out there that at least from a voice perspective communicates with each other. These are traditional services. So these are services like a plain old telephone line, POTS line, a PRI, which is a voice circuit, anything delivered on T1s, because T1s were delivered over copper. But it's not limited to just voice services. If you're an MPLS customer, it's very likely you have a T1 service that's out there. If you are a customer that has an older phone system or key system, you might have analog phone lines that run into that phone system. Or you might have dedicated lines, dedicated access lines, or long distance phone lines that are specific to being delivered over copper. Ryan, can you think of anything else?
Well, first of all, Jeremy, if there are people out there still on these key systems and or PBXs using these old lines, man, we got to get those, start talking about unified communications as a service, cloud hosted, where you can get the latest and greatest features and probably, have more security and reliability and also pay less for them.
So what's impacted? Fax machines, alarms, elevators. If you have an HVAC system, you may have analog lines that are plugged into your heating and cooling systems. If you're in manufacturing, a lot of the equipment that was on the floor of manufacturing plants either had modems or had direct ties back in using plain old telephone lines that were delivered over copper. So this impacts quite a bit of services that you may still be using today.
Yes. So what to do? What to do? There are several solutions to keep these legacy machines or devices running, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So I'm going to, what to do about this change. So on August 2nd, you are not, don't freak out because thinking that everything's going to get shut off. Although we have had a couple disconnects recently, you're going to still more than likely have your service delivered, but they are just in no way obligated to maintain and service it anymore. So at some point, something's going to happen where those lines will go down and the carrier may just say, we don't have to worry about it.
You should expect to be notified by the carrier. The carriers are obligated to notify you in writing that they're going to be disconnecting the services. However, it's in the case that Ryan just referenced, where we've had customers that have been impacted and have lost services. They received an email from the carrier, but it was an email that got lost. It was sent. Keep in mind, a lot of these services have been in place for 10, 15, 20 years. So in their case, the emails were going to somebody that no longer existed at the company, letting them know that they were going to be disconnected.
Yeah. So what to do? So Jeremy and I total have about 50 years in at this and have seen a lot of telecom services, bills, and we've done a lot of audits in our day. What to do? Number one, you could just hope and pray that, and hope, pray, overpay. How do you like that one? Hope that you keep getting the service, that they'll keep delivering it. You're going to overpay, but hey, maybe you don't want to mess with it right now, and that's an option. Second of all, maybe
I don't really think that's a good option. Unfortunately, that's what so many organizations are doing right now because they don't realize what is going to be impacted. But when you start looking at the safety of people that might be locked in an elevator that maybe broke down, or someone breaking into your building and not having the alarm line go off, it's an option. It's just not a good option.
Yeah. So rather than hope, pray, and overpay, you can choose to stay with those legacy old POTS lines, and that's where C3 can come in and help. We have a master distribution ecosystem of vendors like resellers of all the carriers that have agreements extended out 2 to 3 years in the future to continue providing that service and at the rate that you would expect.
It is a temporary solution. So the goal is to help you understand what's going to be the best fit and figure out a long-term strategy. So if you're worried, if you've gotten a notice that your lines are going to be shut off in August, then we have a solution that can temporarily keep your services up and running while you look to leverage a newer technology that will be future-proof. Because leveraging a resold analog line is only a temporary solution. All providers that are under agreements, eventually those agreements are going to run out.
Yeah, so this is like, you got to get that hip replaced, but you don't feel like doing it this year. So you keep getting those cortisone shots, but eventually that's not going to work anymore either. So Number two, so option number two, remember option one was hope and pray. Option two can be relatively simple, or it can be a real pain in the butt for a quick temporary solution, because there are some resellers that can simply do a bill flip, we call it, where you just do a migration. There's no new install. You don't even know what happened, but all of a sudden you're not being billed by the local big phone company anymore. It's a reseller. Okay, maybe that'll work for you guys, depending on where your lines are today and the LMP that goes along with that. Most likely with option number two, they have to rip and replace, so install new phone lines, which is never fun.
Yeah, that requires a physical site visit. It requires a technician to move the jumpers, the little copper jumpers that are in your phone room. The biggest struggle with that is being able to identify what numbers are where today, and then also having a technician or possibly internal staff have to run those jumpers. So it is possible. It's again a good temporary solution, but it's just not a long-term solution.
Yeah. So the next option, option three, is what we typically recommend. But again, to sort all this out, we recommend a C3I, which I call a C3 investigation. I just made that up. And we'll be able to come in and use our experience to help you figure out what's best based on the application and whatever you're trying to do. So option three is to leverage IP internet protocol and the 4G, 5G cell phone network, right, Jer?
Absolutely. And Ryan touched on this a little bit. He touched on that process. I forget your term, your investigation term, but C3 has a team of experts here to help work through determining what services you have deployed. So understand that we may not know what line is plugged into what fax machine where, but we do have a really good starting point, because your billing with your current provider shares a lot of intel that will help us be able to determine what type of services have been deployed. And what we do is we help understand what you're billing for, what numbers exist, and we basically break it down. The local providers have never been very good at having bills that are easy to read. And fortunately or unfortunately, we've read so many of these bills that we do have the ability to help break things down, provide it in a spreadsheet so you better understand exactly what services you have where. We do have the ability to help you get customer service records pulled from your existing provider that actually outline exactly what you have on site. And one interesting sidebar from this is that often when we go through and do a billing audit, we do find misbilling as well, which is a great opportunity to be able to clean things up and save some money on services you may not actually be using. So
yeah. So in my experience, Jeremy, and you too, I'm sure, option number three is typically usually always a savings exercise. You know, think of leveraging an IP analog gateway on the network to spit out a bunch of analog lines for whatever you need them for. Think about a $200 phone line versus a $39 4G plan that you can use for your alarm panels or whatever the case may be. So option three is best. Option two, if you, for whatever reason, don't feel like messing with it. Option one, not recommended. Hope and pray, correct?
So absolutely. And when we talk about the last choice here, which is what's generally called pots in a box, it's leveraging the 4G, 5G network. And what's most important to remember about this is that this is a solution that is compliant. You can use this for alarm lines. You can use this for elevator lines. And what's interesting about it is, yeah, Ryan outlined this. I'll let him run through some of the key points, but it is a technology that's viable and it is cost effective. And most importantly, if Ryan was like, it most likely will be a cost savings. It's going to be a cost reduction long-term, no matter what, because if you don't make a change, the existing billing you have for your analog services, if they don't get shut off, will continue to climb.
Yep. So remember, and recap while we're going back here, option one, expenses increase drastically, 4, 5, 6 times, whatever you're doing today. No one wants that. And that includes, by the way, I don't know if you touched on this, Jeremy, down here, but For example, a lot of folks have a phone system fed with a voice circuit called a PRI typically, or a channelized circuit of some kind for dial tone, for local and long distance calling. But there are folks that have T1s that have SIP connectivity to it, to a SIP provider. Well, that is still subject to FCC 1972.
Yep. So that would be an IP circuit, even though you think you're on IP, and that would be a technology that wouldn't be going away. The delivery method for getting that IP circuit to your site is going away, so it could very well likely be impacted.
Yeah. So we do the investigations for our clients at no cost. We've been getting a lot of inquiries, like I said, a lot of bills coming in. Caitlin or our moderator, do we have any questions that were chatted in? I'm not monitoring, and I got all I can handle with this PowerPoint here.
So here's a good one. So one of the questions that came in is just simply, what can I do in advance to see if I have POTS lines? So we have an alarm line and a couple of elevator lines and a couple of fax lines, but I have no idea what they do or how they're being used today. So there's a couple of different ways that you can tackle this. And keep in mind, the technology that's required in order to switch services over, some of it can be migrated over onto the internet. For example, if you have alarm lines today, I highly recommend that you reach out to your alarm companies and find out if they have an option to be able to leverage your existing internet connections for alarm notifications. Now, you may not be comfortable with that, because if there's a power outage and your internet circuit is impacted, that could very well likely impact the alarm lines. So the POTS in a box solution that we'll touch on in a few minutes, that specific solution has built-in power backup, so it could overcome that. As far as being able to determine what lines are being used where, we highly recommend just doing an internal audit. Go through and figure out how many fax lines you have. Ask what the fax line phone numbers are. So while we can help you pull customer service records, it's also helpful to do an internal audit to verify what lines are being used, and most importantly, where they're being used at, because often those lines are delivered in different phone rooms if you're in a campus environment or you're in multiple buildings.
Yeah. And Ross just chatted in here. Thanks, Ross. Recommend two methods for the alarm: cellular and IP. Absolutely. And on the alarm, so if you don't know what's what, you call the alarm company, you call ADT or EPS, whoever you're using, and say, what do you have on record for this address and then that address? And then they are required to have that information on your account, because it's by law for security.
Well, I think he was asking as well about actual requirements. So interestingly enough, and I don't think we brought it up, but we'll lump in fire alarm. We said alarm, but really a lot of it comes around to compliancy as it relates to local municipalities. So a lot of the local city ordinances require that you have, like in a restaurant, you have a fire alarm line. The criteria behind that falls into being able to have something that still is active and works in the event that you have a power outage. It's the same with an elevator line. If somebody gets stuck in an elevator and there's a power outage, they need the ability to be able to call out and get a hold of for emergency services to get outside of the elevator. And that's, you'll hear people say, oh, but we have cell phones now. If you've ever been in an elevator, a lot of the time a cell phone doesn't work. And this is an interesting note, because the POTS in a box solution, while it uses 4G, 5G, it doesn't use that 4G, 5G in the elevator. It's actually located within your communication room. They do have the ability to have external antennas. So that way, even if you have like a communication room way down in the basement, there's still a way to be able to get that service out. And that is compliant for elevators. It has a built-in UPS unit, and can be used for fire lines and elevator lines. Your alarm line for straight alarm may or may not have compliancy around it. However, it's always a good idea to make sure your alarm line still works if there's a power outage.
Yeah, and we do a fair amount of work in the hospitality industry and colleges, universities, where they'll have a fair amount of analog phones, like in rooms, and just analog stuff everywhere. When we've deployed these gateways on the network here, like an audio codes gateway or the like, help you to fill that need. So there's a lot of ways to do it, folks. Any more questions? Let's see, here's another one. Or wait a minute. Moderator, any questions? I got another chat here.
Oh, sorry, Gary.
Here's the question. One of our sites continues to insist on POTS lines for the elevators. There's something in the new rules that we can use to override his personal preference. I mean, yeah, that's because some guy, I mean, I'm thinking it's just that vendor or that company maybe doesn't want to change.
So this is simple. I would highly recommend taking, and we'll provide it. We can set it out in the follow-up email to this. The FCC ruling was federally rolled out, so it's not per state. I would present that FCC ruling to that entity that says you absolutely have to have that in place, and point out the fact that that copper facilities are going away. We don't have a choice. We have to find a different technology. Yeah. Keep in mind that something like a POTS in a box solution, the handoff and the physical connection back into the elevator is going to look like a POTS line. In fact, everything looks and acts like a traditional line, other than the fact that how it gets out of your building into the public switching telephone network is different. It'll end up riding through the 4G, 5G towers, as opposed to riding through that copper wire that's running into the building. But we can definitely include the FCC mandate, so that way you have it for documentation to share with that individual or team.
Jeremy, another one came in over here on this chat. You want me to read it?
Absolutely.
It says, is there any option to quickly address this change that will not require site visit? We don't staff our sites with people after COVID, or I guess all of our sites after COVID, and trying to schedule a person to be on site.
This is definitely the easy button. So it's going to be in the situation where, in a situation like that, we hopefully can buy you 12 to 24 months. It's not going to be a permanent fix, but the easy button is going to be a reseller that can come in. They can take over billing from somebody like an AT&T, and you'll just continue on as you are today. The caveat with that is that you have to be with an existing provider. You can't be already resold by someone else. So for many years, companies moved away from having their analog lines from AT&T, and they might have a Granite or a reseller that's already in there. In that case, it requires changing the lines, which requires a site visit. So we can quickly determine that for you. We actually have an interesting internal tool that with your phone numbers, we can actually run a search, and it will let us know, are these numbers being delivered as traditional plain old telephone lines, or are they already being resold and you just don't know it? So we can help you up front on that. That's
the real kicker, is we don't really know where it's some of these originate from. So again, folks, bring C3 on as an engagement. I mean, like I said, Jeremy and I, 50 years doing this. We don't charge for it. Happy to help you make sense of this, and we know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two. I
do want to touch on, if we could for a moment, Ryan, if we can jump over the other point I wanted to bring up is and specific to the POTS in a box solution. One of the other areas we've run into challenges with, and most of you on the call probably have run into this, the chip shortage has actually impacted not only Meraki and Fortinet gear, it's impacted this as well. So what we've done is we actually went out and started interviewing all of the different vendors that we have within our ecosystem. And we have a short list of qualified vendors that have equipment in stock. So these are vendors that not only can deliver the solution, but we also know in advance that if you need this in a quick fashion, that they already have the hardware and their gear available. That way we're not waiting for months and months and months to have gear delivered. So rest assured, we have more than one option and we have more than one recommendation, so we can ensure that there's going to be hardware available to deploy.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. So folks, in a quick recap here, I'm gonna do a recap, and I'm gonna let Jeremy end it. But we didn't even have a slide on this, but 3 options for you. Number 1, we don't recommend. Hope and pray. You're going to definitely pay more anyway. Number 2, temporary fix with the resellers to those devices that need analog connectivity. Recommended option 3, let's get you onto IP, onto the network. Let's get you onto cellular. If you're still on an old phone system, by golly, get a hold of us here. We are experts in unified communications as a service. So thank you for your time. And one last thing, a free engagement with C3 isn't just about POTS, isn't just about money savings. Jeremy, close us out with a little bit about what else we could do.
Yeah, absolutely. Because a lot of what we've shared with you today requires us to work together with you as a team and dive in deeper in regards to what services you have deployed. We've talked about doing billing audits, and we've talked about sharing what you're using your services for. But that does extend well beyond POTS lines. In fact, we have several principal engineers in data, IP. We specialize in cybersecurity. We have a phenomenal resource for cybersecurity, cloud services, and backup, data backup and recovery.
Yeah.
Ryan, what are a few more things that I know that you guys specialize in?
Well, I touched on the UCAS. We do that every day, all day. Customer experience for call center software. But our biggest area of growth is definitely the cybersecurity cloud on the right side there. It's just exploding. It grows a new leg every day, and for good reason. So it's stuff to keep up, and that's why we're here. C3 Tech Advisors stays at the front looking around the corner so you don't have to. And I guess with that, we'll end. Get a hold of us. Happy to do a private engagement with you guys to help, okay?
Have a great afternoon. Thanks everybody for joining.
All right. Have a great afternoon. Bye now, folks. Look forward to talking with y'all from the POTS graveyard.